Welcome to the 93rd episode of I Wrote This News. Today is Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. Let's dive into a niblet of news. Today's headline, I'll see your Hunter Biden and raise you a Jared Kushner. 6 months after leaving the White House, Jared Kushner secured a $2 billion investment from a fund led by the Saudi Crown Prince, a close ally during the Trump administration, despite objections from the fund's advisors about the merits of the deal. A panel that screens investments for the main Saudi sovereign wealth fund cited concerns about the proposed deal with Mr. Kushner's newly formed private equity firm, Affinity Partners. Previously undisclosed documents show. Those objections included the inexperience of the Affinity Fund management, the possibility that the kingdom would be responsible for the bulk of the investment and risk, due diligence on the fledgling firm's operations that found them unsatisfactory in all aspects, a proposed asset management fee that seems excessive, and public relations risks from Mr. Kushner's prior role as a senior advisor to his father-in-law, former President Donald J. Trump, according to minutes of the panel's meeting last June 30th. But days later, the full board of the $620 billion public investment fund, led by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler and a beneficiary of Mr. Kushner's support when he worked as a White House advisor, overruled the panel. Mr. Kushner, whose fund has not publicly disclosed a theme or focus, has little experience or track record in private equity. Before working in the White House, he ran his family's commercial real estate empire, sometimes with disappointing results. His best-known deal was the $1.8 billion purchase of the office tower at 666 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. In 2007, the building's mortgage became a crippling liability when the recession hit the next year. But Kushner has demonstrated at least one skill that the Saudi prince likely values quite highly. He played a leading role inside the Trump administration defending Crown Prince Mohammed after U.S. intelligence agencies concluded that he had approved the 2018 killing and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi columnist for the Washington Post and resident of Virginia who had criticized the kingdom's rulers. Kushner's fund is expected to rake in management fees of $25 million per year due to the Saudi investment. April 13th is the 103rd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar. 262 days remain until the end of the year. Now it's time for On This Date in History. On this date in 1870, the New York City Metropolitan Museum of Art is founded. The New York State Legislature granted the Metropolitan Museum of Art an act of incorporation on April 13, 1870. Quote, for the purpose of establishing and maintaining in said city a museum and library of art, of encouraging and developing the study of the fine arts, and the application of art to manufacture and natural life, of advancing the general knowledge of kindred subjects, and to that end of furnishing popular instruction and recreations. This legislation was supplemented later by the 1893 Act, Chapter 476, which required that its collection, quote, shall be kept open and accessible to the public free of all charge throughout the year. The founders included businessmen and financiers, among them Theodore Roosevelt Sr., the father of Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the U.S., as well as leading artists and thinkers of the day, who wanted to open a museum to bring art and art education to the American people. The Met is now the largest art museum in the Western Hemisphere with a permanent collection of over 2 million works divided among 17 curatorial departments. The main building at 1000 Fifth Avenue, along the Museum Mile on the eastern edge of Central Park on Manhattan's Upper East Side, is by area one of the world's largest art museums. A much smaller second location, the Cloisters at Fort Tryon Park in Upper Manhattan, contains an extensive collection of art, architecture, and artifacts from medieval Europe. 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles launches the mind control program Project MKUltra. Project MKUltra was the code name of an illegal human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. The experiments were intended to develop procedures and identify drugs such as LSD that could be used in interrogations to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. MKUltra used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions, such as the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs, especially LSD and other chemicals, electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, and verbal and sexual abuse, in addition to other forms of torture. MKUltra was first brought to public attention in 1975 by the Church Committee of the United States Congress and Gerald Ford's United States President's Commission on CIA Activities within the United States, also known as the Rockefeller Commission. Investigative efforts were hampered by CIA Director Richard Helms's order that all MKUltra files be destroyed in 1973. The Church Committee and Rockefeller Commission investigations relied on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the small number of documents that survived Helms's order. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered a cache of 20,000 documents relating to MKUltra, which led to Senate hearings. Some surviving information about MKUltra was declassified in July 2001. 1970, an oxygen tank aboard the Apollo 13 service module explodes, putting the crew in great danger and causing major damage to the Apollo command and service module while en route to the moon. It was this event that led to the popular quote, "Houston, we have a problem." It turns out that's a slightly erroneous quotation from the radio communications between the Apollo 13 astronauts Jack Swigert, Jim Lovell, and the NASA Mission Control Center, or Houston, during the Apollo 13 spaceflight in 1970 as the astronauts communicated their discovery of the explosion that crippled their spacecraft to mission control. The words actually spoken, initially by Swigert, were, quote, "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here." After being prompted to repeat the transmission, Capcom Jack Lousma. This time Lovell responded with, quote, "Houston, we've had a problem." Let's hear the original transmission.
Houston, say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
In the 1995 film Apollo 13, the quote was shortened to "Houston, we have a problem." Screenwriter William Broyles Jr. made the change, stating that the verb tense actually used wasn't as dramatic. Broyles and American University linguist Naomi Barron said the actual line spoken would not work well in a suspense movie. Here's how the revised version from the movie sounded.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
Celebrating birthdays today are politician Ben Nighthorse Campbell, actor Paul Savino, biophysicist Ruby Poirier-Hearn, composer Bill Conti, musician Al Green, actor Ron Perlman, and chess whiz Garry Kasparov. Happy birthday to all of them, and if your birthday is today, a very happy birthday to you as well. By the way, if you or someone you know is having a birthday and would like us to announce it on the show, leave us a voice message or send an email. The links are in the show notes. Today's news was brought to us by the New York Times, the New York Post, and the website that wouldn't know nepotism if it got a Happy Father's Day card in the face, Wikipedia. If you have a comment or a question about anything you've heard today, or if you have a suggestion, please send us a note at IWTN, all one word, at thatradioshow.com. That email address one more time is IWTN, all one word, at thatradioshow.com.
One more thing, if this podcast sounds a little funny, that's because it's also an experiment. All of the vocals were generated using AI technology. Hopefully the show will sound different and better as the tech improves and as we improve at using it. I'm Bob Meese, hoping you have an amazing day. We'll get together again soon.